My husband James, 33 male, and I, 31 female, have been married for 4 years. We've always dreamed of starting a family, but the road to parenthood hasn't been easy. After years of trying and heartbreak, we finally welcomed our son last year, thanks to IVF and an egg donor. He's the light of my life and worth every tear and sleepless night. From the start, James and I agreed not to share the details of how we conceived with anyone, especially his family. His mother, Susan, 60 female, is deeply traditional and judgmental, and we both knew she'd react poorly. She's one of those people who believes real children only come from the union of two biological parents, and she's been vocal in the past about how she views adoption and surrogacy as cheating nature. I've always felt her judgment, but I was determined to protect my son from her toxic opinions. Things took a turn for the worse a few weeks ago during a family gathering at Susan's house. She'd invited James, me, our baby, and a handful of relatives for a celebratory dinner to welcome the newest family member. I was hesitant to go because Susan had already made a few passive-aggressive comments about how our son looked more like me than James, even though she didn't know the truth. But James assured me that we'd keep our secret, and I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. The dinner started off tense but manageable. Susan was her usual self, making snide remarks about how I was probably spoiling the baby and how breastfeeding would have been better than formula. I bit my tongue and focused on enjoying the evening for James' sake. But then Susan's sister, Linda, 58 female, dropped a bombshell. Over dessert, she casually said, "Well, I guess congratulations are in order for making science work in your favor." Everyone froze. I could feel all eyes on me as I struggled to process what she meant. Susan's eyes narrowed, and she turned to me with a smirk. "So, it's true then? You used IVF to have a baby?" I glanced at James, silently begging him to step in, but he just stared at his plate. I felt my stomach sink. This wasn't just an offhand comment. Someone had told them. Linda, seeing my reaction, continued, "I just think it's fascinating how they can make babies out of anyone's eggs these days." Her tone was dripping with sarcasm, and the emphasis on anyone's eggs made my heart race. Susan's expression turned cold, and she leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "So, whose egg is it then?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Because it sure as hell isn't yours, is it?" I was mortified. I turned to James, hoping he'd put a stop to this. But he remained silent, his face blank. My heart broke in that moment. Not only had he let this private information slip, but now he was letting his family attack me and our son. Susan didn't stop there. She started ranting about how we'd lied to the family, how our baby wasn't truly her grandchild, and how this was an unnatural, selfish way to have a child. The more she spoke, the angrier I got. She even insinuated that I'd pushed James into IVF because I was too proud to admit I couldn't conceive naturally. When she called our son a science experiment, I lost it. I stood up, shaking, and told her she was out of line. I told her that she had no right to speak about my son that way, and that if she couldn't love him for who he was, she didn't deserve to be in his life. Susan scoffed and turned to James. "Are you just going to let her talk to me like this in my own house? After all, she's the one who lied to all of us." And James? He shrugged. He muttered something about how Susan was just upset and that we needed to calm down. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my baby in my diaper bag and walked out, ignoring Susan yelling behind me. James didn't follow me out. He stayed at the table with his family. The silence from him was deafening. That night, I stayed with my sister, who immediately took my side. She's always thought James was too passive when it came to his mother, but this was a new low. She encouraged me to confront him and demand answers, but when James came over the next day, his response shattered me. He admitted that he'd told his brother about the IVF during a drunken conversation. His brother had apparently shared it with Linda, and from there, the secret had spread. He tried to justify it, saying he didn't think it was a big deal, and that he never imagined his family would react the way they did. He also defended Susan, saying, "You know how she is. She didn't mean it." I told him that his mother had called our son a science experiment and questioned his humanity. How could she not mean it? His response? "She's old-fashioned. You can't expect her to change overnight." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked him point blank if he was going to stand up for me and our son, if he was going to make it clear to his family that we were a team and that their behavior was unacceptable. He said he didn't want to rock the boat and that we should just let things cool down. That was it for me. I told him I was taking our son and staying with my parents until he figured out where his priorities lay. He begged me not to go, but I couldn't stay. Not when he refused to stand up for us. Not when he let his family treat us like outcasts. It's been 2 weeks, and James has been calling and texting nonstop, apologizing and asking me to come home. He says he's spoken to his mother and that she's willing to put this behind us, but I don't trust her or him. I told him that until he proves that he can protect me and our son, I'm not coming back. That starts with him demanding a real apology from his family and setting firm boundaries about how they treat us. I love James, but this has opened my eyes to a lot of things I ignored before. I don't know if I can move past this unless he shows real change. For now, I'm focusing on my son and surrounding myself with people who love and respect us. Edit. Update. After posting this, I spoke to James again. He seemed remorseful, but when I asked if he'd told Susan to apologize for her behavior, he got defensive. He said I was blowing things out of proportion and that I needed to compromise for the sake of family. That was all I needed to hear. I've decided to move forward with a legal separation. My son deserves a father who will fight for him, not one who makes excuses for toxic behavior. I'm heartbroken, but I know I'm making the right choice for me and my child. Update 2. It's been several years since I left my ex-husband James. After the fallout with his family and his refusal to stand up for me and our son, I asked him to sign away his parental rights. At the time, I was done fighting for a man who refused to protect his own child from the cruelty of his toxic mother. To my surprise, he agreed. He said he felt unworthy of being a father after everything that happened, and though it hurt to watch him walk away so easily, I knew it was for the best. Fast forward to now. My son is thriving. He's smart, kind, and the light of my life. He doesn't remember James, as he was too young when everything happened, and I've raised him with love, security, and support from my family. Life has been peaceful, and I've done my best to leave the past behind me. Until I got a call from Susan, my former mother-in-law, out of the blue. James passed away a few months ago. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances, but I didn't reach out to his family. We hadn't been in contact for years, and I didn't see any reason to change that. Apparently, Susan had been mourning her son's death and had an epiphany. The only part of James left in this world is my son. She called me and started with a faux sympathetic tone, talking about how she'd made mistakes in the past and how she wanted to make amends. I could tell she was gearing up for something, so I let her continue. She eventually got to the point. She wanted to meet her grandson. I was stunned for a moment. Grandson? The same child she called a science experiment all those years ago? The child her son disowned because he let her toxic influence ruin him? I laughed, an actual uncontrollable laugh, and asked her if she was serious. She said she was. She went on about how James was gone, and my son was her last chance to have a connection to her son. She claimed she'd changed and wanted to build a relationship with my child. I cut her off. Susan, you and James made it very clear all those years ago that you wanted nothing to do with my son. You let your hatred and judgment drive us away, and now you think you can waltz back into our lives because you feel lonely? Absolutely not. She didn't take it well. She started yelling, accusing me of keeping her grandson away out of spite. When that didn't work, she tried guilt, saying it was my responsibility to honor James' memory by letting her meet him. That's when she started threatening to sue me. She said she'd take me to court to get visitation rights and that I couldn't keep her grandbaby from her. I laughed again. Susan, you can't sue for visitation when your son signed away his rights. Legally, my son is mine and mine alone. You're not his grandmother. You're just a woman who shares DNA with someone who walked away from him. She sputtered, saying she'd find a way and that I was cruel and heartless. I told her I'd be happy to forward our lawyer's contact information to hers, and hung up the phone. Since then, she's tried calling, texting, and even showing up at my parents' house, but I haven't engaged. My lawyer is aware of the situation and assured me that Susan has no legal standing. My family and friends agree that I'm doing the right thing by protecting my son from her toxicity. My son has no idea who Susan is, and he never will. I've worked hard to create a safe, loving environment for him, and I refuse to let someone who once called him a science experiment disrupt that. To anyone who might think I'm being too harsh, this isn't about revenge or bitterness. It's about protecting my child from someone who has proven time and again that she cannot be trusted to act with love or respect. Susan has no right to demand a relationship with OP's son after the way she treated them both. She let her own toxic behavior ruin any chance she had at being a grandmother. Honestly, OP is doing the right thing by protecting her child from her. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Wow, the audacity of this woman is unbelievable. First, she insults your son, calls him horrible names, and drives you away. And now she suddenly wants to play grandma because it suits her? Absolutely not. You're right to laugh in her face. She has no legal or moral claim to your child. Not the a-hole. And keep standing your ground. Not the a-hole. Susan lost any right to call herself a grandmother when she berated you and let her son walk away from his responsibilities. The fact that she thinks she can just waltz back into your life years later is ridiculous. Good for you for not backing down and protecting your son from her toxicity. This makes me so mad on your behalf. Susan only wants to play the doting grandmother now because she's grieving her son and realizes your child is her only link to him. But she forfeited that right when she called him a science experiment and a bastard. You're absolutely doing the right thing by keeping her out of your son's life. Not the a-hole at all. Back in December 2019, my boyfriend, 30, said a friend of his was pregnant and scared and going into labor. The baby daddy wasn't interested in the kid, but she wanted to have it. So my boyfriend went to go help her in the hospital. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Hope she's okay. For reference, I was 26 at the time. After a few days, he was telling me how all the nurses were calling him dad, and it bothered me. But whatever, you know. Someone is having a baby with no support. Play dad for a few days. The baby comes. He stays with her until her mom comes from 5 states over to help her with the child. Apparently, her mom is just a bee the whole time. She's telling her this baby is her fault and responsibility, and pretty much doesn't help her. So, the week after, everything is normal. He checks up on the girl, asks me advice about girl things. I'm like, cool, whatever. We get into an argument about something random, and he doesn't talk to me for a week. No texts, no nothing. Like, it's weird because we always argue about little stuff, but nothing serious enough to not hear back from him for a week. When he finally answers my call, he tells me the girl ended up K-ing herself. She called him at 3 a.m. one day and told him to come get this kid, and when he showed up, she had taken a lot of pills. The mom, who was supposed to be helping her, ran away to Atlantic City for the weekend. So I'm upset because he went through all of this by himself and didn't talk to me. But this is serious, so I put my feelings aside and just focus on how I can help. He tells me the girl's mom is hysterical. The baby daddy still wants nothing to do with the baby. The girl's family only wants the kids so they can get child support. He ends up putting on a whole funeral for this girl and adopting the kid so he can help her find a better family. Which I completely agree with. Like the baby deserves a good loving family. Fast forward to now. We're like 4 or 5 months into quarantine, and he tells me that he's keeping the baby and doesn't want to give it up to adoption. I'm not ready to be anyone's mom. He didn't talk to me about this. He just haphazardly said it in a conversation that he wanted to keep the baby, and now we argue whenever the baby is brought up. He avoids talking about it, and the closest I can get is joking about not keeping the baby. I just finished grad school in May 2020. I don't have a job. I feel like I have so much more to do before I raise a whole kid. I don't want the baby to go to a broken home, but I can't take care of a baby. Maybe I'm just selfish, but I'm not ready for a kid. I think that's his kid. Number 1, there's not much chance a single guy can adopt a baby this quickly. Number 2, I don't know any state that would let an unrelated man keep a baby. CPS would be trying to find a blood relative to take the baby before putting it in foster care. Pretty sure it's his kid. I'd tell him I want him to take a paternity test. Sis, they don't hand babies over haphazardly. He signed the birth certificate, and as soon as he did that, the baby became his. He may have got caught up in his feelings on that new baby high, or sleep deprivation, or he bonded with the baby, or there is always the chance that the baby was his biologically. Maybe he is the hero type and was just trying to do a good thing. Who knows? I'm not going to try to throw too much shade on him, because even though he definitely made some big decisions with no communication, and some of those decisions would have made me side-eye my man hard, at least the baby has a home, and I never wish ill on a baby. Either way, if you are not ready for a baby, this is your cue to exit stage left. You did not sign up for motherhood, but he is a dad now. Don't stay unless you are prepared to love that child. Or we will see that baby on here posting in a few years, talking about their stepmom not loving them and the damage it caused. That baby's innocent, and so are you. Up to now, none of this is your fault. But this next step decides a lot. Don't stay if you aren't all in. I know the title sounds bad, but hear me out. I love my fiancée, and she might not be the most perfect person in the world, but I love her, and she's perfect for me. My best friend, let's call her Lily, doesn't understand this. I had a feeling she didn't like my girlfriend, and she has time and again asked me to be sure if this is the person I want. I always brushed her off, but it did get irritating after a while. Things came to a head recently when we had a barbecue at home, and some of our friends, including Lily, came over. My sister, younger brother, and his wife were invited too. Now we have decided to get married and are planning to tie the knot next month, and my girlfriend, fiancée really, is super excited. She wants to have a simple wedding in the back garden, but considering it's not possible in London, we've decided to book a cottage next month to have a little cozy affair. Now, we don't want a glamorous affair, but my fiancée really wants a designer bridal dress. The one she wants can easily go up to £1,000 to £1,500, and honestly, I'm happy to pay. My sister, sister-in-law, and fiancé were discussing designs when they were over, and Lily overheard. She started pestering my fiancé to look at low-budget outfits, as I'm the one paying for it all, and it's ill-bred to put this burden on me. Fiancé ignored Lily, but she continued speaking on how she would just wear a simple gown, even a thrifted one, and that a marriage matters and not a wedding. She also suggested to rent out an outfit instead. And now, my fiancé is a very sweet person, but you do not want to cross her when she's lost her patience. She literally told Lily to duck off, and in no uncertain terms, asked her to stop interfering in what was our private matter. Lily went crazy and started shouting at my fiancé and told her she was just trying to help and that this was no way to respond to a guest in her house and her boyfriend's, meaning me, friend. Now, I can't stand anyone talking to my fiancé like that, and told Lily to leave instantly. It was not dark, mind you, and she drove to our place, so it wasn't like I was kicking her out on the street. She started shouting at me and told me I was hurrying into a marriage and making a bad decision and that I would regret it. At this point, fiancé sees red and literally drags her out, and I let her. My brother and sister are furious at Lily and completely support us. Sister-in-law was shocked and tried to intervene, but my fiancé was unstoppable at this point. So next day, fiancé tells me that Lily is forever banned from our house, but I can see her outside for dinner or drinks. She also tells me Lily is banned from the wedding. And I agree with her completely, but I decided to cut Lily off for good as her outburst isn't a one-time thing. So we haven't been on speaking terms for a while. Now I feel like I have taken it too far, as she's calling me crying, and I feel banning her from our home and wedding was enough. Sounds like Lily is in love with you and is trying to sabotage your relationship because she wants you for herself. I know it's hard cutting off a friend that you've had for so long, but it does sound like the right decision in this instance. She will continue to try and sabotage your relationship, marriage, if you allow her to still be in your life. My husband, son, and I moved to his home country because he got a job opportunity there and wanted to be close to his family. I didn't have much family to begin with, so I decided to say yes. His family and I have always gotten along very well every time we went to visit and vice versa. We have currently been staying with his parents, brother-in-law, and his kids, and it's been hell. Ever since we moved in, their attitude flipped like a switch. I am expected to wake up much earlier than everyone every day and make breakfast. And when I say early, I mean 5 a.m. This is followed by cleaning up after everyone, doing dishes, and general cleaning. I also cook lunch and dinner because they expect cooked food for all 3 meals during the day. I wash everyone's laundry, iron, and fold it. I am expected to take care of my husband's nephews, and one of them is disabled and confined to a wheelchair, and I am now his primary caretaker. This includes bathing him, changing his diaper, and making sure he is comfortable while brother-in-law is at work. Although, even when he isn't, I am still expected to do the same. I am at everyone's beck and call all day and every day. I don't even spend quality time with my son anymore. I am so exhausted, and even if I complain about the amount of work I do or do it wrong, I get berated. I'm also not allowed to get a job because wives are supposed to stay at home and raise kids, run the household. My husband works, but I don't get to even see a cent of his money because it's a man's responsibility and only he can handle finances. The thing that hurts the most is my husband agrees with his family 100%. I feel so betrayed because this wasn't my expectation. Staying with his family wasn't even the plan. I'm just so tired. I just want to go home. I feel like my son will eventually see how unhappy I am. I am, however, grateful that my in-laws treat him normally, even though he isn't biologically my husband's, and he seems to be happy to be staying with his new cousins. I have tried speaking with my husband many times, but he does not want to budge about moving, saying it's tradition for us to be taking care of his parents, and wives have been and will continue being in this position that I'm in, so I should stop being so dramatic. I don't know anyone here, and I feel so lonely and trapped. I'm not entirely sure what kind of advice I'm looking for, but I just want someone to reassure me that I'm not crazy. How can I try to talk to my husband so it gets through to him? Do not have a child with him. It will be really hard to leave and take your child. I'm really happy he is not your son's father. Please, things will not get any better for you. They may get worse. Go to your country's embassy and see if they can help you get out. Start having a friend or a family member send you money, but make sure it is hidden in something else, because they probably will open up your mail. You won't get through to your husband. He does not want to hear any of it if he told you to stop being dramatic and won't budge. Sounds like your husband planned this. Is this really the life you want to live? 19 female. My boyfriend, 27 male, and I have been dating for 1.5 years. Previously, he dated his ex for 6 years. They've been broken up for almost 3 years now. She broke up with him and it was messy, but they've since made up. His ex just got married 2 days ago to her best friend. We don't live in an area with lockdown or restrictions. Since my boyfriend and his ex are on friendly terms now, she invited the both of us to her wedding. I had no objection because my boyfriend seemed like he just thought of her as a friend. He assured me he was over her. He was emotional during the wedding ceremony, but that was understandable since it was a lovely ceremony. Even I got teary-eyed and I barely knew the couple. Then came the dinner and dancing. A bit into the dancing portion of the evening, there was another slow song and many couples were dancing on the floor. The song was quite sad. Honestly, weird choice for a wedding. I realized my boyfriend was not in the room. I went outside and found him and the bride slow dancing together. They weren't kissing or anything, but she had her hands on his shoulders and he had his hands on her waist, and they were swaying to the music. If it was any other woman, it would have been harmless, but I felt like I had intruded on a private moment. Then the song was over and she went back inside for the cake cutting with the groom. I also went to my table and pretended I didn't see anything. When my boyfriend came up beside me, he said he wanted to go back to our hotel. He looked very tired. I agreed, and we sat in the taxi silently. When we reached our hotel room, I told him I saw him dancing with his ex and asked what he was thinking. I must admit, I blew up at him, but I was so upset. He told me to calm down and that it's not what it seems, that they were just dancing as friends, etc. I told him if it was so innocuous, then why were they outside away from everyone, including the groom? He said he was outside for some fresh air, and she found him there. He said it was she who initiated the dance. I told him I don't care, and called him a cheater and a manipulator. We are back home now, but I've been living with my friend. I'm so upset at him, but when I talked it over with friends, they seem to think it was acceptable and I'm overreacting. You need to break up with him. He is not over his ex and he is using you. You are young. Move on to someone better for you. You deserve more. Why was their dance in secret? That's a huge red flag. Had the dance been in front of the groom and everyone else, fine, no big deal. But the fact that they were secretive about it is a problem. I, 24 female, husband is 30 male. Lost my baby last week. And now I also have to worry about the fact that my husband's family thinks I did it on purpose. A little bit of backstory. I've been in the US for 5 years, but I'm not from here. Different skin color, foreign accent. I'm not the daughter, sister-in-law they expected, which his mom and sister have voiced before, in front of me. Hubby told them to stop, and things got somewhat better, although his sister still makes weird comments at times. She invited us over to her place, and then had the nerve to say in front of everybody that my miscarriage is not that big of a deal, since I did it on purpose, and that it's not like I wanted a baby anyway, which is not true. I said to her once during our first year of being married that I felt that we didn't need to rush into getting pregnant, and she took it and turned it into me not wanting babies. And now, over a year later, she threw that in my face. When hubby tried to stop her, his mom joined in and said that his sister was right, that I probably did do it on purpose. Like what? My husband stood up in front of me, and when he realized his mom was in on it too, he grabbed me and we left, which I'm grateful for. But he now wants me to let them come over and apologize. But I never want to see them again. I know that's unrealistic though, so how do I look at them? Have them at my house without wanting to throw something in their faces and tell them how I really feel. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law are definitely terrible people. Their apology will not come from the heart, but from the tongue, just to save face with your husband. Keep these people at a distance from now on. Tell him unless it's an honest apology in front of all the people that were present, then it counts for nothing. Put your boundaries up now, or you'll be posting about them for years. He has 2 families now, you and them. If he wants to continue his family with you, he's going to have to put a stop to their BS now. I would put off having kids right now, until he puts on his husband pants and fully stands up for you. He's barely half-heartedly doing it right now. What exactly is he going to do when these harpies decide that your baby is now suddenly their baby? You can't parent right. He'd be so much better leaving you and letting them help him. This is the script these crazy people use most of the time. Now is the time for you both to grow a shiny spine and nip this in the bud. Go into couples counseling. You do not deserve to be treated like this.